It is time. Hello everyone and welcome to what is the final round of our first Le Mans Ultimate Championship here on Le Mans Ultimate. We are at Le Mans itself, the Circuit de la Sarthe, home of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the crown jewel of the World Endurance Championship calendar. What way to end off our first season. Not just 60 minutes of racing tonight, but a full 90 minutes with double points on offer for the championship standings. Joining me as always and directing us through tonight will be the wonderful Sam Grant. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm doing very well. Very excited tonight, and yeah, really looking forward to this. 90 minutes of racing, double points. Oh, it's going to be so exciting, Scotty.
It will be indeed, and that means the championships are all to play for. Looking at the, let's start with GT3 standings as we're currently watching. It is James Kiley that we're watching. Second place in the GT3 Championship at the moment, 20 points off of Johnny Ashley. So if James Kiley wins this race with the double points, he would take the championship no matter where Johnny finishes. If he is second, if James Kiley is second, Johnny would need to be fifth or lower for James to take the championship and overcome the 20-point deficit that he has coming into this final round. As we see the Mustang heading through the Porsche curves, a wonderful and would certainly be my favorite section of this track. Fantastic sequence of corners, this.
Yeah, certainly, and it's going to be very interesting to see the difference in pace tonight. There was a couple of drivers talking in the Discord before the race, talking about, it's going to be a game of confidence, really, and understanding where you can maybe be a bit more brave on the throttle, carry a bit more speed, and where you just need to lift off instead of brake. Those kind of things, those little things which will add up very quickly with a circuit with such a long straight on it, for instance, and it's a really high-speed circuit. There's a few technical aspects, but it's such a high speed throughout, really, that nailing as many corners as possible will be very much crucial. Also, in the Discord, talking about tire compounds, which is not a conversation we've had much throughout the series. There hasn't really been a need for it, but tonight a couple of drivers talking about which tire compound to take.
Yes, of course, with Le Mans being a 24-hour race, we have all three tire compounds for the hypercars: soft, the medium, and the hard. Of course, wet tires are there, but we aren't getting anywhere, I should say, tonight, so we won't have to worry about that. But yes, drivers will have to pick and choose what tire compound they want for the conditions we have. A little reminder, the endurance compounds, they're not like Formula 1 where the soft tire is the quickest and the hard tire is the slowest but most durable. They're all similar in terms of their potential performance in both pace and durability, but that comes when it's in its optimum windows, and that's where the tire compounds are different. The soft tires work in colder conditions, have the lowest optimal temperature, the hard tires needing a higher temperature to really come into their own. And that's why you've got to pick your compounds. And of course, you got to remember, the drivers are free to change their tires based on any corner of the car. So your front left, which is used quite a bit here, might be a hard tire. The rest of your tires might be mediums, or maybe both of your fronts will be hards. Strategies like that are quite common when it comes to tracks, just to make sure that all four of your tires are in the optimal window and not just 2 or 3 of them. We're watching Alfie Bevan, who currently sits second in the hypercar standings, 15 points behind Elvin Blomqvist, so has a little bit more of a chance of taking the top spot. But yeah, the permutation's not too dissimilar to what we have in GT3 field. Alfie already into the final sector, coming up towards the Porsche curves once again, which is going to be a defining point, not just for the qualifying laps that we're watching a moment, but when it comes to lapping the GT3 cars, a lot of time it can be lost through here if you just catch a GT3 at the wrong moment. We're seeing first times come through. Blomqvist of our championship contenders is first driver to set the benchmark 3:26.9. Alfie Bevan is currently about 4.5 tenths down out of the middle sector. Can Alfie pull any time back in the middle sector into the Ford chicane to round off the lap, bouncing over the curbs, maybe getting a little bit of a slide out of the final corner up to the line? It won't be enough for provisional pole. 6 tenths off on their first flying laps, and with the long lap time right here, we're already halfway through the session.
Indeed, and that's crucial to get at least some lap time in there. Obviously, resetting to the pits, for instance, if you have a mistake, it's going to be so costly. We talked about tyre temperatures. It takes a couple laps a lap at least to get your tyres where they need to be before they're really performing and before you have some semblance of grip. So crucial to get something in, as we see Alfred will make a little bit of a mistake. Luckily, keeps it out of the walls as he heads on to the Mulsanne straight. Let's also flick to maybe someone else who's not resetting. Dave Spiller there, just setting a personal best in Sector 1. Obviously, we saw earlier as well Alfie Bevan setting purple Sector 1, Sector 2, but that was replaced, I believe, by Elvin Blomqvist, who was 4 tenths quicker in Sector 1, which really isn't much considering, the length of this circuit and how big some of these sectors are. So to be within 4 tenths of the leader isn't bad at all. Alfie Bevan resides in second, 6 tenths off the leader. Bain, a bit of a gap there. We're going to see a bit of a gap, I think, throughout this evening in pace, as we've talked about, but crucial to at least close those gaps in qualifying as Dave Spiller approaches the first chicane. The second chicane. Is that the exit of the first chicane? Yes, on the Mulsanne straight. Threw me off there for a second. Although I could still be wrong, Scotty. This is not my most well-known track.
I gotta be honest, it's funny seeing You hear you trying to figure out which of the chicanes that was. That was the second chicane. Through the right-hand kink then towards the end of the straight. Now thinking about your braking point, getting the car in. Difficult braking point with the track slightly kinking to the right again, just before the braking zone. You want to keep the car straight as possible to maximise your braking potential. Very important corner. It's probably the biggest braking zone of the entire lap, and then you come on to this next very long straight down towards Indianapolis. So the exit of Mulsanne corner, very important. To the gravel right on the outside of the curb too, so no margin for our Indianapolis. Not the biggest, but the most difficult braking zone as you're trying to slow the car through that quick right-hander, then slow it down even more for the left-hander. You've got this sort of tricky square right-hander, probably the tightest corner of the track, Arnage. That then leads you towards the Porsche curves. Dave Spiller in a Porsche does not give you any extra advantage having a Porsche through the Porsche curves, as Stevie Payne found out in practice, binning it off through here. Behind will Dave Spiller fire on their, I believe, second flying lap over the curb right up to the wall, using all of the track width, swinging the car into the right-hander. Always impressive to see the change of direction from the cars through there. Now coming out of the exit down towards the Ford chicane, has lost about 2.5 seconds, sorry, over the first two sectors to Blomqvist, who's in provisional pole still. And now through the chicane, looks still through the first part, through second part looked tidy. Could maybe have attacked the curbs a little bit more, but it was clean out to the line. Will not improve in the final sector, but overall improves to P9 in the hypercar field.
Indeed, Sun Angel here sitting purple, sector 3 last lap, so has a bit of pace in them to maybe rival the leaders in that class. Obviously improves in the first sector there on their personal best, but a little bit off the best sector there. But who's to say the best sector was set by Blomqvist, other than me a few laps ago? But maybe that was replaced. But in that wingless Peugeot, I thought it would be very interesting to see at the Mulsanne straight. Obviously, we've seen them have some incredible top speed, incredible rates of speed whenever there's a straight involved. But there is also the technical aspects of the circuit to consider as well. And we've seen also Sun make some mistakes. So, despite having that massive advantage, it's not all said and done. A 10th so off of Alfie Bevan for P2, but 7/10 currently off of Elvin Blomqvist, as we await obviously for the update to sector 2 and see if they've had any improvement. Looking fairly tidy coming out of the second chicane there, heading towards and through this king up towards the braking zone down the end of the Mulsanne straight, the hairpin there.
Yeah, with what we've seen so far this season from the wingless Peugeot, I'd expect it to be the strongest car down the Mulsanne straight and in this middle sector with its straight line speed. Of course, braking zones maybe a little tricky, like what we saw at Fuji. Angel really struggled with turn 1 there. But yeah, we expect this car to be very strong in the middle sector, waiting for that time to come up. I believe it comes up as we take the run down to Indianapolis, unless they've invalidated the lap, which they might have done. But we still have speed trap figures, and surprisingly, it isn't Angel on top of the speed trap. Of course, all of the cars will be going to a bit of a lower drag setup, lower downforce compared to the rest of the season, to try and have a bit more speed down the straight. And yeah, that shows here. Angel only second quickest in speed trap. Quickest is our current provisional pole sitter of Blomqvist at 334 kilometers an hour. That is about 206 miles per hour. So very high speeds through here, as Angel, I think, has invalidated this lap, has had a messy few corners either way through it. So I don't think they will be improving on this lap.
No, I think you're right there. And also, sorry, just to mention top speed figures, obviously it's crucial to get an exit going onto the Mulsanne straight, but it's such a long straight, Scotty, that really doesn't matter in terms of top speed, how good your exit is. That only really affects lap time at that point. There's enough of a straight for you to reach the top speed of your car, I'd imagine.
But this corner coming onto the straight, Tete Rouge, very tricky, especially track limits. Trying not to run wide on the exit, not invalidate your lap or pick up track limit points when it comes to the races. Angel Cooksley taking very cautiously through the chicane to set up their what will be final lap of the session. I can't believe it. We're already nearly done the session. It has flown by so quickly. We cut to James Kiley, who is in provisional pole, to the annoyance of Johnny Ashley, I would imagine, would obviously take the championship in this position if they could hold on to the lead throughout the entire 90-minute race, and has improved just a smidge, just an ever so slight smidge, to 21 thousandths in the first sector, as they go on for obviously their final lap. 7 tenths back to Trink de Tass in the Ferrari, and Ben Brown makes it 3 manufacturers in the top 3, as we now cut to Alfie Bevan in the Hypercar Cadillac, improving fastest middle sector of anyone. Now coming into the Porsche curves, I have to imagine will be pushing as hard as they can to try and make up the couple of hundredths they need in this final sector compared to Blomqvist to take provisional pole. You can see pinpoint accuracy through the Porsche curves are from the helicam, and now we'll be heading to the Ford chicane. Tricky corners, got get the car bouncing over the curbs in the right manner, very easily to overshoot and just overdrive this part of the track, but gets it run out, and it's not going to be enough. Loses time in the final sector and will be a quarter of a second short of provisional pole, and that will be Alfie Bevan's qualifying session done. We cut back to James Kiley, who has improved even more in the middle sector, looking to underline their pole position with a little more certainty. Of course, has the Porsche curves to go. That Mustang, one of the stronger cars. It actually looks pretty even through the speed traps for the GT3 cars. Yeah, most drivers around 280, 281 or 279. Trink de Tass looks to be the quickest GT3 through the speed trap at 282.6 kilometers an hour. But we have Paulo Grady improving up to 4th within the GT3 field to get ahead of Fuskin. But how far can James Kiley put that sort of benchmark at the top of the field? Through the chicane now, checkered flag still waving, comes across line, will go quicker. It's a 4-minute 2.1, puts themselves a second clear of Trink de Tass in second.
Indeed, and I've just seen there a 4-minute lap for the GT3s, and obviously a 3.5-minute lap for the hypercars. It's going to be crucial for them to not accidentally get wrong the virtual energy and fuel tonight. You know, it's so costly to get that wrong, and here, even more so if you've just missed the pit entry.
Yeah, will do indeed. Daniel Lindblom, the final car to complete a lap in the hypercar class. Doesn't improve, staying last of the hypercars, unfortunately for them. I think they'll be a bit disappointed with that, and that is all our hypercars finished. Trying to see, I think we have just one more car on a lap. That is Dean Smith, currently down in P12 of the GT3 cars, and though is not improving on this lap. So I believe this will be our final order from qualifying. That will set the grid as Dean running a bit deep into the chicane, just puts you offline. With how sort of tight this section is, you can't really get back onto the right line, and you just lose quite a bit of time throughout the 4 apexes. It does have a personal best final sector, but yeah, 10 seconds off the pace in the end of the top time by James Kiley in the GT3 field. It'll be P12 at the end of this session. I believe that is everyone done in qualifying.
It is indeed, and you know what that means, Scotty. It's time for the starting orders. Let's quickly run through that, shall we?
Our final starting order of season 2 in 2025 of oNiD. Elvin Blomqvist takes final pole position ahead of Alfie Bevan as the two fight for the championship. Soon Angel will round off the top 3 ahead of Nick Manders in the first try. Stephen Bean will make it P5 for the Porsche ahead of other Porsche Max Farrell, all Porsche third row. Dan Tomlinson will start 7th with Charlie Morgan in the Soul BMW starting in P8. Zach Silver will start P9 ahead of Andy Hearn, rounding out the top 10. Dave Spiller just missing out in the Porsche ahead of Fertoy in the winged Porsche. Or might be wingless there, I think they've gone to for final round. And Daniel Lindblom rounds off our hypercar field. James Cully starts on pole for GT3s ahead of Trent Dutas and Ben Brown getting into the top 3. Good qualifying session for them in the Aston Martin. 3 manufacturers in the top 3 for GT3s. Fuskin will roll off P4 in the Mustang, and Paul Grady getting the McLaren into the top 5. Have fellow McLaren driver Ryan Davies taking P6. Current championship leader Johnny Ashley down in P7 will need to improve from there if they want to take the championship by the end of the 9-minute race. They'll start ahead of Frank Vivek in the fray and Tim Bob from P9. Tom Watson rounds out the top 10 in GT3 field ahead. Darren Wilkes, Dean Smith and Jared Page will go off row 13 overall, 12th and 13th within GT3 field. And Ollie Knowles, bit of a disappointing qualifying for them, will be the last of our GT3 runners. The grids are now forming up as we get ready to head on for this little short run up to the line, just 30 minutes before they are set to roll. But yes, decisions to be made on tyres. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, 90-minute race, bit of variation in the strategy, though I will say tyre wear is very low here at Le Mans, so despite the longer race, not expecting any tyre changes this race, but who knows, maybe some people will surprise me. But yeah, will be interesting to see how people do for energy. And as you mentioned, very important to get it right, as 1 lap of energy here is a lot more time spent in pit lane. And yeah, long laps, it could be a little bit difficult to judge just how many laps there will be this race.
Indeed, certainly. So they finally roll away then to start their very short formation, which with tyre warming going on for the Ferrari there on pole. Obviously, Alfie Bevan lining up alongside him there, ready to try his best on the start.
As a little reminder, whoever wins out of Blomqvist and Bevan would take the championship. Blomqvist does have a 15-point advantage, but would not be enough to cover off Alfie if Alfie did take the win. If both of them dropped through the pack, it could be helpful for Blomqvist. But how this will go, well, we'll just have to wait and see. Coming up to the 4th chicane now, not long before we get the final green flag of the season. So then, 27 sports cars heading through the chicane. They come out onto start-finish straight, and for the final time this season, for season 2 in 2025 of oNiD Racing, we are away for the 90 minutes of Le Mans, and it looks like a clean not a great getaway for James Cowley. It looks like they're coming under pressure in the background. Alfie Bevan's trying to get up the inside of Blomqvist through turn 1. It'll be the outside for the chicane, but they just back out. Blomqvist has bottled it, too deep onto the brakes, locks the rears and slides off into the runoff. That's very lucky to maintain P2 there, but is coming under a lot of pressure from the Peugeot. The Porsche in the background, Stevie Bean up to P4 ahead of Nick Manders, Tomlinson ahead of Farrell, and Silver ahead of Morgan. It looks like one side of the grid has had a much better start than the other here, but through Tetra Rouge now onto Mulsanne Straight for the first time. Slipstreaming is going to come into play, and those drivers have been have gone a little bit higher on the wing, running a little bit more downforce. Might struggle a little bit here. Manders in the slipstream is going to pull alongside Stevie Bean. Can they get alongside? No, they pull his slipstream, and the momentum just isn't there into the first chicane for the first time. Everyone Constantine is up, but no contact so far. They'll be looking to get a good exit, maybe get a run on the car in front. We have yellow flag. That's a Porsche, I think it was, spun in the background. Is that Andy Hearn? No, sorry, it's for Toy. It looks like, yeah. Toy has spun at the chicane and is back amongst the GT3 cars, so she'll be able to get past them here. And as we go past the lead GT3 fields, there's James Kiley, but they have the right of trying to task in front of them. More action at the second chicane. I think that's a hypercar off into the tire. I think it was a Ferrari there. Nick Manders dropping downfield, down to P7 now, behind the right of Max Farrell. Who's still P6 where he started, but Dan Tomlinson making up a couple of positions up to P5 now, and is going to try and get past, or is trying to defend here from Farrell. Farrell getting wiggly on the brakes, gets into the back of the caddy, and that's Stevie Bean that's spun on the exit of, Stevie Bean spun on the outside Mustang corner, getting a going gate will drop all the way down to P9. Very costly mistake from them, and that puts Dan Tomlinson up another position, or not, as Nick Manders is coming back to retake P4 on the inside towards Indianapolis. The Porsche Max Farrell in the background, maybe looking to try and take advantage of this, and so is Zach Silver. 3-0 up in contact between the caddy and the Ferrari, and the Porsche trying to send it the long way around. It's a little bit too deep now. And through Indianapolis now towards Arnage, as Angel is fighting with Blomqvist for P2, but a spin from Nick Manders, and the Porsche and caddy into the wall, and they're trying to sort themselves out, but they've got each other stuck in the wall. And careful with the rejoin. Tomlinson, as they try and get going again, nearly hit the Porsche, and it's all gone manic. As Bertoy comes to the collision as well. Again, replay, the Porsche just locking the rear brake, slamming into the Ferrari and the caddy in, and the caddy sort of spun it back into the wall, prevented it from getting going again. So Dan Tomlinson's dropped to P9, Andy Hearn to P10. Bertoy is up to 11, so Farrell is down to 13, so Manders dropping down to 13th within the class and has heavy suspension damage. But you come back further up, Stevie Bean and Zach Silver now fighting over P4, and despite that mistake at Mulsanne corner, you have to say maybe it worked in their favour, kept them out of the danger zone through that was Arnage, and Stevie Bean is up to P4 now. Very chaotic lap here to start the field, and we only really watched the hypercars there. We didn't see much of the GT3 action, of which James Kiley has got back in front of Trinket Tass, and there we see Andy Hearn struggling with suspension damage. There's going to be a few hypercars coming in at the end of the first lap. They'll have to come in once again in this race. Going to be a long way to go from here.
Indeed, such a chaotic lap, as you were saying. Amongst all that as well, other blockers did briefly retake the lead. And just looking at the speed trap in that first lap, it looks to be Alfie Bevan who was leading the way down the Marsden Straight, 3 kph slower really than the rest of the crew there. So that slipstream seems to be worth so much there. So crucial if you can take advantage of that. Alfie Bevan obviously leads the way, as we talk about here. We also watched Tom Watson chasing down Ollie Knowles, going through sector 1 now, obviously. And again, we've talked about this all throughout the series. Managing the traffic is going to be, has always been a challenge for hypercars and GT3s. Tonight, I think someone mentioned in the Discord, we might even see GT3 cars lapping GT3 cars again as well.
Yes, we might with the longer race, especially with some drivers struggling, maybe not having the confidence through the Porsche curves. You've got the wall through the left-handers that can really sort of have you scared of running wide, can easily pick up damage there. But onto the Mulsanne Straight for the second time, so we see Charlie Morgan missing or making a mistake into the second chicane, cutting over the gravel, and they will continue on in P7. I believe they're behind Daniel Lindblom in the Cadillac, sorry, who will carry on in P6, but some gaps opening up already after the lap 1 chaos. Most importantly, you can say Alfie Bevan opening a gap, just trying to break the slipstream. Paul O'Grady having still dropped down 2 positions from where they started, down to P7 in the slipstream. A fellow McLaren driver, Ryan Davies, but not able to make a move into the second chicane here. A little bit wide though from the inception. McLaren could give Paul O'Grady a run to Mulsanne like that, already closing in quite a bit. We'll have to look to the outside though if they're thinking about moving to Mulsanne corner. they'll be hoping that they can clear their fellow McLaren before the braking zone, just to make the overtake a little bit easier, but doesn't look like that'll be happening here.
No, certainly not as easy to pass a GT3 car as a GT3 car, unlike the hypercars going down the Mulsanne straight. Continues on for such a long time as they go through the hairpin there at the end of the Mulsanne straight, which I actually believe is called Mulsanne in fact. So as we see a GT3 car off in the background, that's Tom Watson recovering there from the gravel. We did also briefly see some other gravel flicked up, so drivers looking like they're having an issue, maybe judging how much speed they can carry that little kick before the hairpin, and then obviously getting onto the brakes while they've got a bit of steering lock on as well. So tricky corner, and obviously catching a few drivers out. Tim Bob here in the slipstream of Frank Vevic, that 296 providing plenty of help there as they head towards sector 3 now, I believe, onto the brakes into the left of Indianapolis, I'm going to say tentatively, through to Arnage, as we see a Porsche recover as well in the background. That's Ollie Knowles, it seems.
Ollie up 4 places in GT3 field into the top 10, recovering from that per qualifying, but still has a bit of way to go as we see Nick Manders struggling there. I'm surprised he hadn't pitted, but coming into the Porsche curves through the left-handers and now into the right-handers. You can see that car not quite straight. Some suspension damage, flings it into the wall, just losing the rear end, and then has to spin the car around. Now has much more significant damage and is for sure going to have to take a trip through Pillion. Lucky not to lose a wheel there with how heavily they hit into the wall. We've got to be careful of the GT3 cars that are coming up to pass, and that means despite they're going to be the 4th hypercar to have to pit at this early stage of the race. Far from ideal for them.
Indeed, and really is struggling with the car there, and that's going to be suboptimal for their strategy. You just see the Ferrari there in that replay just suddenly snap with all that grip, and some of these corners, you go in such speed and have to rely that the grip will be there, and when you've got some damage, you can be surprised when halfway through the corner the car just can't hold on anymore. Matthias Chiskin here chasing down Ben Brown for the final podium spot in the GT3 class here. It was actually 4 kph quicker in the speed trap than Ben Brown. So that Mustang has some strengths, it seems. So maybe just having to bide his time, wait for the Mulsanne straight and just passing that way without risking anything in these more technical corners there. As important as they are, obviously, to maintain a good lap time. Onto the Mulsanne straight now, obviously. Getting closer and closer now, 6/10 and closing actually towards the GT3 car just ahead. I wonder what they're like on the brakes as well, Scott. I'm not sure if you know if it's fairly even or not.
I wouldn't know the difference between GT3 cars, to be honest. There's so many cars across the 3 classes, or 4 classes we have. I personally haven't touched the GTEs even, but yeah, so many I haven't had enough experience in all the cars to know the exact differences between them. But we got a little further back, Tom Watson, the Aston Martin that ran off into gravel at the end of Mulsanne, looking to the outside here on the McLaren, then switches to the inside of Darren Wilkes for the first chicane. We'll try and get this move done under braking. Both of them, I would say, seemingly quite tentative there, but they both get through. Tom Watson now up to 19th, and we'll try and chase down the next car, Tim Bob, who is 13 seconds up the road as they try and recover from that mistake not too long ago.
Indeed, here it is, just in the shadow of Ollie Knowles. There is Tim Bob. Ollie, we saw have a couple issues earlier. I don't know if he's picked up some damage. He might have done, which will be aiding Tim Bob in that McLaren as they head towards the hairpin after going through the kink on the Mulsanne straight, of course. Gonna be interesting to see here the difference. Tim Bob, the gap has grown a fair bit coming out of those chicanes, so maybe just a difference there of braking or confidence. Clearly had a great exit coming onto the Mulsanne straight, and obviously the slipstream of the Porsche certainly helped, but now the gap has grown a fair bit, but a long way to go in this race, so really no point in risking anything too silly, just biding my time really.
Yeah, the important thing here is having a clean race without any major issues, especially in that hypercar field. Think of how many people have had, there's 4 hypercars at the back of not just the hypercar field, but overall behind all the GT3s. So, you know, having a bad day in hypercars. Yeah, and I think Nick Manders is unfortunately just DNF'd, and that's Frank Vevic into the wall at the end of Mulsanne, coming into the braking zone, hits the brakes, gets into the ABS, I think, hits the gravel, and just isn't able to slow the car down for the wall. Heavy contact, front end into the tire wall. They'll be, I think, in need of a repair at the end of this lap once they get back round to pit lane. Another important thing, it's very important not to pick up damage, because you know, if you pick up damage at the early point of the lap, you have such a long way to travel to get round to the pit lane, and that could be very costly. But we come now to not just the battle for the lead in hypercars, but the battle for the championship. Elvin Blomqvist a little bit lower on energy, but has been closing in Alfie Bevan over the last few laps. Has the fastest lap of the race, does Elvin Blomqvist, 1.5 tenths quicker than Alfie Bevan's personal best, and with that has closed in to get the slipstream now as they hit brake for Mulsanne corner. As you can see, a couple of hypercars in front. Those are hypercars they will be lapping soon enough, which is a bit crazy to say at this early stage of the race. Andy Hearn and Vertoy in front. But yeah, it'll be quite interesting to see exactly when those hypercars, when our leaders catch up to the lap cars. It could be a bit detrimental if it's through the Porsche curves, but could be beneficial if it's on the Mulsanne straight. As wide into the gravel goes Elvin Blomqvist. I think Alfie Bevan was a little wide himself in the Cadillac. Elvin Blomqvist kind of followed him through and went even deeper, and yet drops back by half a second there. Not ideal for them, I'm sure. With pace, Elvin Blomqvist has been able to close up. He will close up once more, but is this pushing? Just maybe hurting the tires a little bit. Seems to be draining the virtual energy a little bit more too. So in the push to try and get the lead back for Blomqvist, this may just be playing into Alfie Bevan's hands over the long term of this race.
Yeah, certainly. I was going to mention the last lap was 6 tenths quicker than Alfie Bevan in Sector 2, and actually had the fastest Sector 2 there. So does have the pace of some areas, but pushing too hard, maybe just ruining those tyres too much, too early, using a bit more of that first energy than Bevan has. It's a long race, and there is strategy to think about. It's not just being ahead at any point in the race. You have to get to the end while being ahead. So managing that battery, having a shorter stop because you have to top up less virtual energy, may be a way of overtaking drivers here. Sure, you know, they can get it done on the Mulsanne straight or in some of these braking zones, which would be quite tricky. But there's also the pit stop to consider, yeah, there is a big difference in some of these stop times. So definitely a crucial part. Charlie Morgan I've just spotted as well, chasing down Zach Silver. Zach Silver, who's recovering from an incident which I think cost them a couple places earlier on as well. Charlie Morgan just briefly getting within 7 tenths. Now obviously backing off as they go on to start a new lap and head towards the first right-hander here.
I think Zach Silver made a mistake last lap. It was a 3:40 on the lap time, which is quite slow. We have a replay here. Is this for Zach Silver? Yeah, coming into second chain, just clips the curb, and that spins the car round as they were maybe holding the brake too much as they hit the curb, unsettling the car, puts them into gravel. They lost a place to Dave Spiller, and now Charlie Morgan is putting them heavy under pressure out of the Tetra Rouge onto the Mulsanne straight. Charlie Morgan is going to be in the slipstream now as the sole BMW. Of course, these drivers already gained position space compared to where they qualified, helped by that incident that we've seen at Arnarge on the opening lap that's taken or sort of contributed to Nick Manders being out of the race. But a little bit deep there for Charlie Morgan. Won't get the best exit out of the first chicane, but will still have the slipstream to try and close up. You can see that gap just going up as Zach Silver has the drive, and it's continuing to last. Has opened up an extra 10th here, but will Charlie Morgan be able to close it in at all? Of course, the concertina effect allows it to close in, but looks like Charlie Morgan's been a bit more cautious in the braking zones. The gap has increased furthermore, so it looks like Zach Silver maybe gaining some confidence back as we see an issue here for Max Farrell at Indianapolis. But yeah, another mistake for someone already sort of well out of the battle for the hypercars, but can still score a point. Is 10th at the moment in the hypercar class, so still a couple of points actually, of course, with the double points this race on offer for Max Farrell. And just as long as they can keep it clean as they pass the GT3 field. But we'll cut back to this battle as looks like Charlie Morgan has dropped back just a little bit more through Mulsanne corner. So after that mistake for Zach Silver, they're getting back into a rhythm, showing a bit more pace and starting to pull away from the BMW once more.
Indeed, that BMW's been a bit of a wild card this season, by the way. Obviously, we've seen... oh, it's gone right in my head. There was a driver, a wildcard driver, using it pretty well, to be honest. Charlie Morgan as well, shown some flashes of excellent pace throughout the series and some good results. So it's hard just to say, unlike the Peugeot, sure, it's quick and straight, whatever, but the BMW, I think, has always been a bit of a wild card, a bit of an interesting one as well. So it is interesting to see them now chase down Zach Silver for P6. And obviously, Zach can have a little bit of tyre difference to Charlie, obviously, with any instance they may have. Every little helps, especially at a longer race like this, to be honest, as they go through sector 3. Keeping it a lot nice and tight there was the BMW for flicking through to the left. Again, just using a bit more of the exit there was Charlie, trying to carry as much momentum as possible and just maintaining, a higher average speed and just get closer and closer to Zach. So when they do get onto the Mulsanne straight, they can get past before any braking zones interfere with anything there.
I think the driver you're referring to is Ben Shawley, who we've seen quite a bit through the first half of the season. Despite being a reserve driver, unfortunately, they haven't been able to make the later rounds, nor are they counted in the standings. They'd still have a decent position, I think, in the standings with how well they did in the first half of the season, but reserve drivers not counting towards the championship means that they don't have anything to show for it, unfortunately. But we see here Paul O'Grady now catching up to the back of Ollie Knowles, who's actually up a few more positions, down to P7 for the Porsche drivers. So yeah, Ollie Knowles passed Paul O'Grady last lap, being nearly 3 seconds quicker. So the Porsche driver on that recovery drive still 2.5 seconds behind Ryan Davies now for P6. And we'll be trying to chase after, but Paul O'Grady maybe not quite as quick as the Porsche drivers, trying to take advantage of the slipstream on offer here to try and get a little bit more pace, try and drag themselves up to Ryan Davies and maybe put Ryan Davies under pressure, when Ollie Knowles pass, maybe make it a sort of double the loss, double the pain, you could say, for Ryan Davies getting past as well. But still about 2.5 seconds to go there, so we see a bit of trouble here for Alfie Bevan and Alvin Blomqvist as they come up on an Inception McLaren through the first or through Mulsanne corner. That was Darren Wilkes, so it was in the background, now being passed by Fertoy, who is running the older Porsche, it should be said, without the rear wing for this race, having gone the opposite way to the real-life Peugeot team. And that's Max Farrell into the wall, and was that out of the running? Let's see a replay here of what happened through Indianapolis. As I said, the most difficult braking zone on the track, gets onto the curb and then can't slow. That's very odd. Really wasn't able to slow the car down. I thought it was going to lock up and sort of spin into the wall, but just didn't slow down at all. Heavy damage, as you can see. Max Farrell struggling to keep the car in a straight line. But be careful of the Porsche coming up behind them to lap them, as we see Ollie Knowles and Paul O'Grady coming to tangling with each other a bit through the Porsche curves. Paul O'Grady now getting back in front. I wonder if Ollie Knowles made a mistake through the Porsche curves there.
Yeah, possibly. I can't see anything on the kind of yellow flag log, but maybe with Max is off and some other things going on, getting caught out in that. And obviously we saw Paul before in the slipstream, maximising any advantage he can get, and was just, I guess, in the right place at the right time. We did see a bit of contact there between them as well coming through sector 3, but they do seem to be running all safe and sound there as well. And yeah, that instant with Max as well, you're right, it's such a tricky complex there. You're carrying a lot of speed, which is the option way to do it, and if something goes wrong, you're going to be carrying a lot of that speed off with you with that incident. It's going to be a big incident most of the time, unfortunately. There, Blomqvist as well, catching up to Bevan. 5/10 is the gap there, trying to take back the lead. I wonder if there's much advantage in staying behind and staying in the slipstream, or if the dirty air or if having to adjust to the braking points is more costly than just having the lead of the race this early on.
Well, you have the slipstream, which might help you save a little bit of virtual energy. You've got the dirty air, which might hurt the tyres, especially through the long corners of the Porsche cars, as we see these two lapping that GT3 battle we were just watching. By the way, I had a quick check of the replay. Paul Grady got in front of Ollie Knowles before the Porsche cars, the Porsche driver closing up and then getting into the back of the McLaren, just as we switched over to them. So that's what was happening between them two. Paul Grady still leading in front of Ollie Knowles for now, but the Porsche driver soon will be looking to get back past as soon as they can. We'll continue to we'll switch over that pal. Just 4/10 separating these two. Looks like the Porsche driver is dropping back a little bit on the straight, and in fact I'll tell you why. Ollie Knowles, the slowest driver by far in the sprint trap for the GT3s. 274.9 kilometers per hour for the Porsche driver, 281.9 for the McLaren. That's a good 7 kilometers an hour advantage for that McLaren. So yeah, has been very strong, the McLaren, in this straight line compared to, or I shouldn't really say strong for the McLaren. It's not really strong, it's just that Porsche is very weak in a straight line and will definitely need that slipstream to sort of try and stay close. And yeah, we're saying that's why the Porsche is also then so strong in the Porsche cars. It's got maybe a bit too much downforce for this track, too much wing. And yeah, might need a little setup adjustment. I believe you can change the wing angle in the pit stop. It's not something I've done, so I don't know sort of what the time loss would be from it. But it might be a consideration, I would say, for Ollie Knowles. That straight line speed, yeah, you just might need a bit more of it.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, if it's costing him this much, clearly it's definitely worth a change. Despite, you know, if it's something like 15 seconds for a change, which is a long time, obviously, that's 2 laps worth of time gained back if you think about it that way. So it is certainly a valuable investment. Another thing, maybe it's fuel map, if that's an option. Maybe they're trying to save fuel, save virtual energy for a different strategy. You know, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. There's a yellow flag again for Max Farrell, unfortunately, further down the order. As well. Johnny Ashley, by the way, closing up the gap to Matthias Shiskin here for 4th in class. We see Matthias just ahead of him in that Mustang as well. Last lap, Johnny was about a second quicker than Matthias. Similarly, actually, both those drivers' last laps were their fastest lap as well. So a second difference in fastest lap times between these two. And with Johnny Ashley less than a second now, surely it's only a matter of time before he is able to catch up, use that slipstream to get past with the Mustang power, and get on his way to chase down P3, which is Ben Brown, as these hypercars also decide that they need to lap Johnny. Obviously, the Mustang is getting right up the way nicely and letting them through.
Well, fun fact, those hypercars weren't lapping the GT3s, so that is Andy Harnan for Toy, of course, involved in that lap 1 incident. So they are passing these hypercars for overall position at the moment, making their way through. But yeah, nice little sort of 3-car battle shaping up here between the GT3s for the final podium position. Of course, Johnny Ashley, we'd love to get up to P4, because that then puts a little bit of pressure on James Kiley. That then, you know, once Johnny gets up P4, as we said at the start of the broadcast, James Kiley would need to win to take the championship. But yeah, Johnny Ashley would rather be up there fighting James Kiley directly, I would imagine, for the championship. But yeah, at this current point, even with that 20-point lead coming into this round, James Kiley wins this race with double points. He would take the championship regardless of where Johnny finishes. But if James Kiley is second, he would need Johnny to be 5th or lower. Currently that is met. Johnny gets up 1 place, it means James Kiley has to win.
Indeed, it's sort of a Brazil Massa Hamilton situation, really. Yeah, Johnny on his way to chase down before the gap has grown, funny enough, as they got onto the Molson straight. Obviously, the hypercars unsettling things a little bit, and obviously thanks for the correction with Fatoy and Hearn getting on by for position after their pit stops earlier on in the race. Johnny just catching up still to Fieskin. Keep your tidy, no need to push. Keep those tyres nice and safe, as he has a little bit of oversteer moment coming out of the second chicane there down the Marsden straight. We see a Porsche there also get on by, which is actually lapping Johnny and Simley lapping Fieskin just ahead. Also just spotted a fragile Dan Tomlinson here against Charlie Morgan in that BMW.
Yeah, Charlie Morgan using straight line speed to get past the Cadillac. Down towards the second chicane, has got a move done nice and cleanly, and will now be trying to chase down Zach Silver for P6. Unfortunately, don't have a last lap time for Charlie Morgan, as they would have invalidated it. But yes, getting that move done with the straight line speed. Despite on our top speed figures being a few miles per hour slower than Dan Tomlinson, so that's a bit interesting, but as sort of tradition goes for this season, Dan Tomlinson and Daniel Lindblom have found each other on track in the same livery.
Indeed.
I have no words for it at this point.
Actually, what? I have no words, and they should have no coverage is the answer to that. But no, Dan Thompson squirrely on the brakes there, locking up briefly, trying to avoid any contact on the slightly tighter line as he tries to get past the McLaren GT3, trying to retake the position back from Charlie Morgan. Obviously, Dan Lindblom behind, watching this unfold in a bit of a better position, really. He's got that space between this where he can carry a bit more momentum and use that to his advantage there. Both these Cadillacs getting past the GT3 field, and just circling back to Charlie Morgan with his speed traffic. I think in the Discord he mentioned last minute changes to the wing, just a couple extra clicks just for a bit more confidence through the Porsche curves and some of the more technical sections. I think that might account for the difference in the speed trap. Yeah, Dan Thompson, Dan Lindblom. Well, I mean, what can we say, Scotty? All season long, we've mentioned, can someone change the livery so it's a bit easy to spot who's who? Yep, no problem. And they both do it.
Yeah, well, you want us to change liveries? Yeah, we both can do that. Hope that helps.
Yeah.
They laugh.
Have they got the same number as well? Yep, they have. Excellent.
Yeah, well, same livery, same number.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we can't have any adjustment on the racing number. It is directly linked to the livery, and the number 3 Cadillac has always been the yellow one. In the WC, of course, in IMSA, they ran the gold livery at Sebring last year, I think it was, to celebrate Mobile One's 50th anniversary. So yeah, we got a lovely gold livery for that, but that was in IMSA. We don't care about IMSA here, let's be honest. Well, I say let's be honest, unfortunately we don't. This is the World Endurance Championship game. So unfortunately, yeah, we don't get that livery as drivers onto the Mulsanne straight once more and get to slipstream. Starting to get a little bit darker here. The headlights of the cars becoming a little more prominent. Let me just try and see what time we are in game. We have just reached 8:30 in the game, so we are getting closer towards sunset. Now, one thing I think might actually be good to pick up at this point, maybe not this point actually, is Dan Lindblom has got right onto the back of Dan Tomlinson and is putting their fellow Cadillac driver under pressure, not just under pressure, steaming on by as they head to the second chicane. Looks like an easy move. I wonder if Tomlinson has a little bit of damage or something that is inhibiting their top speed at this point of the race. But as they try and come back on the brakes, that'd be a very brave move, similar to what we seen into Indianapolis last lap on Charlie Morgan. But just has to back out that is, yeah. Tomlinson trying some brave moves, has been lucky to back out of them in time before causing an incident, I would say.
Yeah, certainly. We just saw briefly Johnny Ashley in the pits, obviously relinquishing some places in favour of some fuel, I would imagine, stopped for 36 seconds. So a bit of a short stop compared to what we've seen so far, but obviously so far we've seen people also repair damage. So yeah, that's first of our GT3 leaders, I suppose, if you think of it that way. Stopping there, Dan Thompson lapping the GT3 field there. Sorry, Dan Lindblom lapping the GT3 field. Dan Thompson now lapping the GT3 car. These two, I imagine, is going to be glued to the end. As there's a tiny bit of a lock-up there for Lindblom, giving Tomlinson a glimmer of hope, and Dan Lindblom a glimmer of flat spot, I imagine.
Yeah, that's one thing you won't avoid is flat spotting the tyres. You'll feel the vibrations down the streets as you're rolling the tyres at over 200 miles per hour. It'll be a nice feeling and might just make you think twice about changing the tyres, or give you a sort of second thought about changing them. But yeah, it would not be ideal when it comes to the time loss. We look to Tim Bob, who finds themselves in front of Ollie Knowles. This for P6 in class, as Apollo Grady, who Ollie Knowles was fighting earlier, has also made a pit stop. So yeah, we're seeing a few pit stops. 4 cars now having pitted out of the GT3 field. Quite early on, they might be able to get to the end from here, but I don't know if it's the ideal fuel strategy. You know, obviously at this point of the race, you'd be running a little bit heavier on the fuel now, or if you were running lighter on the fuel earlier in the race, you'd have to take longer to fill not just fuel, of course, but the virtual energy back up into the sort of later part of the race. Looking here at the figures, 16% for Alfie and Alvin Blomqvist. I'm starting to wonder if they can get to the halfway point in this race. The 45-minute mark, it might be a bit close for them, but a little bit wide there for Tim Bob. Might give Ollie Knowles an opportunity here. They might have the inside for the Ford chicane, but straight line speed, the extra wing angle I mentioned, might hold them back. They go for it under braking, and Tim Bob just sees them coming and decides to let them have the position. Doesn't want to risk it side by side through the Ford chicane.
Indeed, certainly. And obviously another thing is to mention is the GT3 cars also having the virtual energy requirements. Unfortunately, we don't see that on the overlay, but that's something they're all also managing. Interesting point about some of those drivers not making it quite to the halfway mark. Certainly there'll be some lifting and coasting, as we've seen throughout the season, maybe a bit more extreme than previously, perhaps. Another thing to mention as well, as you mentioned, time in the race currently, and that's the track temperature. Obviously, at the start of the race, it was about 2 degrees higher track temp and about 4 degrees higher, I think, ambient temp. So it's really quite coming down, and that's something they're going to have to factor in when they decide to change tyres, if they do, and the way they're currently driving at the moment. So certainly going to be interesting. We see a major slide there from the Porsche of Ollie Knowles through that right-hander onto the onto the Mulsanne straight. Sorry, obviously an incredibly quick corner is Tertre Rouge there, yeah, Ollie Knowles is showing how quick it can be and how much fun some of the drivers are having.
Yeah, it's actually a very difficult corner to try and pick your apex as we swap to this battle. Daniel Lindblom, I say battle, just breezing past the BMW. It seems the easy move there, not really battle. And we can focus on something else. I think it's worth bringing up regarding sort of the time of day, the temperatures. You mentioned the temperature dropping, the track temp already down, like, was it like 4 or 6 degrees this race? That could have a bit of an impact, because a lot of this track is a straight line. That Mulsanne straight, and also the straight after Mulsanne towards Indianapolis. It means that the tyre wear is very low right here compared to all the other tracks in Le Mans Ultimate, and does mean that changing tyres is very unlikely, even for a 90-minute race. So whatever tyres you started this race, you're probably going to have to hold on to the end of the race. Now, GT3 drivers, they have one compound, they're not too worried. But those in the hypercars did have a decision to make at the start of this race. What were they going to run? And here's what everyone has. Most of the field has purely medium tires. A couple of people, Zach Silver and Andy Hearn, have soft tires, which are maybe been struggling a little bit more. I would say maybe overheating a little bit more at the start of this race compared to everyone else. But as the race goes on, the track cools down. They should get better and better, so we should see those drivers getting a little bit stronger. Fertoy is actually swapping onto the soft tires, it looks like, as they are in the pits at the moment. But the one I'm most keen on there is Sony Angel on the hard, mixed between hard and mediums. They've got 2 hard tires on the front, 2 mediums on the rear. So I think that could maybe become a bit of a struggle. I've helped them in the first phase of this race to sort of keep the car in better balance, but it could maybe come to bite them later on when the track cools down. We cut to a replay here of Ollie Knowles and Tim Bob. Tim Bob closing up quite a lot with the high rear wing angle that Porsche has, carrying a lot of speed into Indianapolis. Gets the car slowed down, picks up the throttle a little too early or aggressively. Coming out of Indianapolis, spins towards the wall, find reverse, and now finds themselves behind Tom Watson again. We'll have to re-overtake the Aston Martin driver. But yeah, at the moment, field certainly a bit more spread out. We're kind of used to seeing the field a little bit more spread out here, but it's usually after the first pit stops. Oh, okay, we've seen a few up and down the grid, but we're not seeing that many, so it's a bit odd to see the field so spread out at this point of the race.
Yeah, certainly is going to be a weird one, and we've seen a couple of drivers stop early on. Jenny Ashley, for instance, is one of those drivers. Ollie Knowles, again, has a moment, I believe, trying to recover that, and that would be why he's missing a wing. And we've seen how difficult it can be as we actually see Johnny Ashley in the background there. This will be for position if Johnny decides to get past Ollie Knowles, which I believe he will, as Ollie Knowles struggles to get going. Luckily, he isn't too far from the pits. Luckily, isn't too far. Is far enough away from Johnny, I should say. Christ. But we've seen, drivers having to retire because they've lost a wing, and how difficult it is to control the car. Luckily, he's not too far from the pits, but even then, it's going to be a major struggle as he enters the pit lane, or enters the route to the pit lane there as well. But yeah, a couple of drivers having, it's almost comical, I'm sorry, it's hard not to laugh watching the drivers without a wing. Different strategies, and interesting to see how that works out as well. And as you see a couple of the hypercars in the background, could that be the Dan Twins? No, it's not. It's not Tom.
That's our 2 leaders coming into the pits. The Bevan followed by Blomqvist following the wingless Porsche. I think might have sped into pit lane there. Seemed to slow down a bit late. Maybe just caught out by where the line is for that chicane. Alfie Bevan having to run around the Porsche driver. Let's just see. This is these 2 into the pit lane, jumping over the curbs, and you can see that Cadillac definitely slowed down in time. But I'm not sure that the Porsche driver was. Wondering how the Porsche lost its rear wing. Of course, we've seen the spin, but they managed to not hit the wall, so they would have lost that at a later point. And well, the Porsche curves, probably the worst corners to ever have a no rear wing at. Maybe this is why. Coming into the right-hander, rear end just spins round on them. I wonder if the rear tires were overheated or damaged. Does a full 360, gets going again. McLaren just about avoiding the Porsche as it gets back up to speed. But now through the here again, now the long right-hander, and then into the left-hander and the rear. No,
maybe it's this one. Sorry, there are a few here for Ollie. Not to put him on the spot here, but let's have a quick look at this one. Similar spot, snaps, round he goes, as you were saying, into the tyre wall, and there it goes.
Yeah, again, sort of similar to what we've seen with Nick Manders and the damage earlier on this race, but the rear end starts sliding out. You go to correct it, the front just grips up, and you basically turn yourself into the wall, unfortunately, trying to catch the slide. Very difficult situation, very difficult to sort of precisely catch, just correct the car enough that you catch the slide, but not too much that you steer into the wall. We see Dave Spiller coming out of the pits, jumping in front of Stevie being there. So a lot of our hypercar drivers into the pits, but we still have a few that have not come into the pits. Angel, Silver and Morgan are the drivers that haven't pitted. I imagine they will be pitting very soon. At least they're going to get a little bit closer to the halfway mark. And the drivers are going to have a big question. Do they fuel save this stint, or do they go flat out and make another splash and dash? Big question here. But Alfie Bevan, I must say, I think is quite a bit further ahead, trying to look at the gaps. Alfie Bevan has managed to get in front of Zach Silver and Charlie Morgan. Blomqvist has come out behind those two drivers, so Alfie Bevan has clean air at the moment, free to push as fast as they can. Elvan Blomqvist is in the traffic that is yet to pit. That could be costly for Blomqvist and give Alfie Bevan a bit more breathing room. We see two Mustangs as close as they can get. I think they're teammates, judging by how close they were there. And James Kiley just getting away before that next car comes into the pit. And will carry on their journey to taking our first Le Mans Ultimate Championship in the GT3 class, it should be said, alongside whoever wins out of Blomqvist and Bevan in the hypercar field. Looks like it will be Alfie Bevan at the moment, but we still have, remember, over half of this race to go. 90 minutes tonight instead of the typical 1 hour. So plenty of racing action still going. This is Blomqvist behind that traffic of Charlie Morgan and Zach Silver just up the road. There is Bevan just in front, who hasn't looked to have gone too far away. And you can see these drivers already used quite a bit of energy at the moment. So they will definitely be coming in for another pit stop. But with Silver and Morgan only having 10%, I think they're saving. And they won't be going for another. They'll only be taking the one pit stop as they come past a slow-moving Frank Vevic who has had issues. And this coming up on more traffic. That's another Ferrari through the Porsche curves, and it has backed these cars up. Blomqvist now getting alongside Charlie Morgan will get the move done as BMW coming into pits this lap, but Zach Silver stays out for one more lap and jumps over that final corner. Elvan Blomqvist into the back of Zach Silver, and that's going to slow both of them down. But more importantly, Elvan Blomqvist, as I was allowing Alfie Bevan to extend a bigger gap. Blomqvist now 6 seconds behind Alfie Bevan and still has to get in front of Zach Silver, as we see Ryan Davies right on the back of Matthias Fuskin just as they've come out of the pits, and is trying to take currently P5 within the GT3 field. Johnny Ashley managing to jump Matthias Fuskin with that earlier pit stop, and is now chasing down Ben Brown. 4 seconds, that gap between them. Fuskin just holding in front of Ryan Davies before this braking zone into the first chicane.
Indeed, and you mentioned there that Johnny actually jumping with the early pit stop. I don't think it was the earliest stop that did it. I think it was Matthias Fuskin spending 20 seconds pretty much extra in the pits than Johnny Ashley, and a bit higher than the average for the GT3 field. This Ryan Davies is completely concealed by the Mustang of Matthias Fuskin. They're maximising the slipstream for as long as he can. Pulls out rather dramatically, I have to say, as they go down there, drag racing towards the next chicane. Is he losing ground outside the slipstream? I think he is, you know. Mustang just opening up the corner a bit more, pushing the McLaren to the outside there. So, you know, I'm still here. I'm opening up this racing line. I'm going to keep this position for now, at least. A bit of a wiggle from the McLaren there to try and get on the power coming out of the chicane. They're heading towards the kink, obviously, and towards the hairpin. But again, the gap has opened up now. The Mustang gets on the power, doesn't have the slipstream, and the McLaren just scrabbling to stay within it, it seems, as they head towards the heavy braking zone of the hairpin. There also, to mention, as we talked about pit stop times, quite a variance, Scotty, in the pit stop times for the hypercar field. I wonder if people are trying different strategies or if they've just got some damage they're repairing.
Let's see, Stevie Bain was in there for quite a bit longer. That would have to be damage. Dan Tomlinson damage. Andy Hearn for Troy damage, I would say. The rest of them are around that 38-second mark, which is very comparable to the GT3 field. So I think that is people just filling up with energy. The one interesting time I see is 50 seconds from Fuskin that we're watching here. Why is that interesting? That is about 12 seconds more than 38 seconds. Well, why is 12 seconds important, you might ask? 12 seconds is the exact time it takes to change all 4 tyres. So maybe Matthias Fuskin has changed tyres and is having to warm them up here on the iLap, and maybe that's why they're coming under pressure from Ryan Davies. But you give it maybe next lap, Fuskin, new tyres up to temperature, will probably be starting to pull away from Ryan Davies then.
I mean, possibly, but they did also just have a bit of a shunt. I don't know if that was netcode from a spectator perspective, but it, you know, it almost looked like a. I'm not saying he did, but I say netcode because it almost looked like a brake check with the way it kind of buffered there. But if it was, you know, a bit of damage there on the rear for Matthias, a bit of damage on the front for the McLaren as he came out of the Indianapolis corner, as they've got some hypercars lapping the field here as well, and the gap grows between these two. So I do think that was some actual damage. It wasn't just netcode.
I just want to say we've seen that was Elvin Blomqvist just passing the McLaren of Ryan Davies. Round the outside through the Porsche curves. Very clean move. That good example of how to overtake a GT3 car in a hypercars. We see Daniel Lindblom making a move up the inside of Stevie Bain for P5 in hypercar field into Indianapolis. Clean move. And we'll try and get on their way, trying to look at the last laps. Both cars pitted the last lap, actually. Stevie Bain, as mentioned, 1 minute 7 seconds in pit box, about 30 seconds more than the average pit stop. Yeah, it's been a bit of a rough time and has dropped them back. Zach Silver into the pits now, the last of our hypercars to make their pit stop. And you can guarantee, now that we're over halfway through the race, it will be their only pit stop. So where they come, so yeah, they'll sort of, they could be very much being the fight. It's very difficult here for Stevie Bain and Dave Spiller through the GT3 packs, getting really caught up there. I was looking at the timing screen, so I didn't quite see what was happening between the two, whether GT3s were being unpredictable or whether they just sort of mistimed their run on the GT3s, as missing their braking point into the chicane was Stevie Bain there, and cut the corner. That definitely would have picked up track limit points for that, and will be a bit closer to a drive-through penalty. I don't know if we have given the drivers a little bit more leniency, as we see a penalty pop up for Jared Page. They're currently running P11 in the GT3 pack, but is entering the pit lane to serve that penalty immediately. But trying to come back, Stevie Bain on Daniel Lindblom now, gets themselves back up to P4.
Oh, Stevie though with the error there.
Yeah, runs wide coming out of the S's, and luckily keeps the car pointing in a straight line, keeps it out of the barrier, but it's not going to come under pressure from Daniel Lindblom, who tucks into the slipstream. Dave Spiller still in the background, thinking of how they can maybe take advantage of this. The car's sparking their way down the Mulsanne straight, very much so, as they scrub against the ground. And looks like Daniel Lindblom will get the move done under braking. It's deep into the chicane, bounces all over the curb, and Stevie's going to try and come back here, and the Cadillac lets both of the Porsches through. Dave Spiller's going to try and take this opportunity now in the slipstream of their fellow Porsche driver, closing in to Stevie. We'll try and take P4. Closing in, but isn't going to be close enough here. We'll look to the speed trap of these two. Dave Spiller, half a kilometre an hour quicker than Stevie, top speed wise. So very minimal difference between these two Porsche drivers. That could just be one click of rear wing. But yeah, Daniel Lindblom making that mistake, trying to get the overtake done, has cost them an extra position. But coming up to Ferrari as they get towards the braking zone here of Mulsanne, this could be quite a defining moment in this battle. Stevie might have, Stevie would have needed to have lifted there a little bit earlier, coast a bit more into the corner to not catch the Ferrari too early. We'll get the Ferrari on the exit, not losing too much time. These three hypercars making their way. Charlie Morgan there in the background, and that's the Cadillac of Zach Silver running wide into the gravel at Mulsanne corner, just in the background of shot, losing them a bit more time down in P8. But yeah, this three-way battle is, very weird moment there for Daniel Lindblom. I hope that was lag, but yeah, very weird moment there.
Yeah, I would have thought it would lag if the position wasn't changed, or was it changed? Weird either way.
He has genuinely lost that time, so yeah, I'm very confused to what happened there. We'll have to do some investigating.
Indeed, yeah. And also, I was looking at the live speed earlier on the Marsden Straight as Daniel pulled out against Stevie Bain there early on. 5 kph was the difference there, and that's before the first chicane on the Marsden Straight, so that's incredible. Incredible amount of difference there. As I think Alvin Blonkers just had a moment there and is struggling with some damage or something, it seems, into the wall. That's crucial. And struggles, and that's just as they get onto the Marsden Straight, so he's going to be carrying that damage all the way around. Let me see if I can catch a replay, because that looks terrible.
Yeah, that car really crabbing. Let's see if we can find out what happened into the S's through the right-hander. Have they ran to the wall? No. Coming up to Ferrari. Oh, gets onto the curb as they hit the brakes, just and sells the car. That is such a costly mistake. You know, trying to open up Tetra Rouge as much as they can, misjudging the width of the track. That is costly error, and that has put Alvin Blomqvist out of any hope of winning this championship, and is effectively crowning Alfie Bevan. As long as they can get to the end of this race, okay, Alfie Bevan is on to win this championship, as despite leading coming into this round, having won 3 races so far, with a further 2 second places, Alvin Blomqvist has given away this championship. It started with that mistake at T2, remember? Braking for the chicane, locked the rears and had to cut the corner, give the place up to Alfie Bevan, and has now bottled it once more. Heavy contact. Look how much that car is crabbing down the straight.
Yeah, it looks comical. It looks like a kind of bug, you know, a glitch on that. But it is crabbing that much, and it's just awful. Rear damage, front damage. He's going to be struggling so much, and he's got such a long way to go. He's a minute and 20. Sorry, he's a minute and 53 into his lap. He's halfway round, really, and he's still going to get stuck in the pits. And who knows how much more damage is going to accumulate before he gets there. Oh, and almost taking out another car while it's doing it. I mean, if that happens, you have to think to yourself, maybe I should slow down a little bit more or consider retirement.
Yes.
It's barely able to keep it going in a straight line. It's almost dangerous.
I think Blomqvist needs to maybe put on the pit limiter and just run at that 60 kilometers an hour to pit lane, because last thing we want to see Blomqvist do is take out another competitor from that car just being uncontrollable. There goes Stevie B now up to a podium position. Is a minute off Sony Angel in P2. But yeah, very costly mistake. Been doing a bit of investigating on that sort of prior moment we've seen. It was a bit of lag, I think, from Dave Spiller that sort of seemingly caused that incident. Sort of just came back to Dan Lindblom, and yeah, it was quite weird. But they seem to, I think Dan Lindblom might have a little bit of damage from it. Hopefully not, as that'd be unfortunate with it being lag. But yeah, things getting a little bit hectic here, at least for Alvin Blomqvist, who's already dropped to P8, still yet to make it back to the pit. Leader in the championship coming into this round of the hypercars. So costly. It's not facing the wrong way. When you're facing the wrong way, just wait for the cars to come past you and then get going again. If you're starting to completely spin the car and be facing the wrong way, then it's maybe the point of thinking about, hang on, maybe it isn't safe to be driving here. I
mean, we can see the steering wheel from this perspective. It's upside down. You know, it's really struggling. There's still such a long way to go yet. I mean, I hope for the best, obviously, but I'm just wincing non-stop at this, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, part of you, the racing driver in you, wants to drive as quickly as you can back to the pits, but when you do that, you drive too quickly, the car spins around out of control, and you lose any time you would have gained by driving quicker. Drive a little bit slower, you don't spin, you keep the car pointing the right direction, and you actually get back to pit lane a little bit quicker. So, yeah, Blomqvist just needs to slow it down a little bit there. Remember, Andy Hearn for Toy already a lap down on the leaders with their earlier incident, so Still a chance of Blomqvist earning a few points here. It's going to be nowhere near enough to win the championship, of course, but they could be coming under pressure from SimHound now, who's obviously promoted up to second place and is only 53 points back. Let me do a little bit of math to you, for you, and I will come back. Oh, yeah. Very interesting here. 53 points for SimHound. They're currently scoring 54 points. If Blomqvist does not score any points tonight, i.e. finishes 11th, Angel will take P2 the championship and Blomqvist will only finish P3.
That's close.
And yeah, I think that would be a big disappointment for Blomqvist, having had 3 wins this season to only finish P3 in the standings. But of course, there are drop rounds to play into that, though might not be the case. Blomqvist still might have, with drop rounds considered, might have second place wrapped up, but it's a little complicated, the drop rounds, to do the math on the fly.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait till the end to find out what happens in that regards.
Indeed, we do. As Paul O'Grady chases down Tom Watson, who went wide before getting onto the Marseille Straight. I think went wide, trying to open up Tetra Rouge, but we see him now closing the gap to the Aston Martin is Paul O'Grady in the slipstream there. 2/10, I think, if not more, gained in the slipstream. Hard to tell, obviously, with the Constantina effect as it stands there. Paul O'Grady not as tight through there, but maybe that's a better thing. You know, opening the corner, carrying more speed. We'll see as they get on to the next section of the Mulsanne Straight. Fairly even, you know, I think it's just dropping out of the slipstream range. Really kind of maximum effectiveness, but certainly a battle that's heating up. Looking at last lap time as well. Paul O'Grady, 4 minutes, 9 seconds. Looking at the rest of the field, that's pretty quick, to be honest. That's the quickest all the way up to P4 in class, Johnny Ashley. So really is quick, 2 seconds quicker than Tom Watson. So has some pace, has some confidence at least, does the McLaren as it stands. With 32 minutes to go, I think there's definitely more in the cards in P9 for Paul O'Grady.
I'll tell you what wasn't quick though, was the pit stop for Paul O'Grady. 1 minute and 5 seconds in the pit box, nearly 30 seconds longer, about 25, let's say, longer than everyone else. That's why Paul O'Grady finds himself a little bit further behind Tom Watson. First of all, trying to make the move into the brakes as we see an issue for Toy here. Coming to Indianapolis, and that's another car with low damage. Careful of the Cadillac coming up, has a little lockup down the inside, probably skirted a little bit by the Peugeot, which doesn't seem to be, isn't tracking quite straight, but certainly isn't nearly as bad as what Blomqvist was. Blomqvist still in the pits at the moment, repairing that damage, has been stopped for 1 minute now.
It is a long stop. It'll probably be a bit longer. And you mentioned Paul O'Grady so much. I wonder why that's why he's got this turn of speed then. Maybe he's changed his tyres at this point in the race and thought it was a better strategy. That might be why he's slightly quicker, but is pressurising Tom Watson regardless of that. 3/10 is the gap as they come out of Arnage, heading towards the Porsche curves. Seems to be fairly even, so is able to just, you know, catch up in the slipstream, but fairly even throughout the sector 3 though.
Paul O'Grady maybe getting a little unsettled on the brakes into the Porsche curves, but still carrying a bit more speed. I mean, with that pit time, I'd imagine there's some damage repair for Paul O'Grady. It's a bit too long to just be tire change first with virtual energy. So, yeah, maybe a bit of damage repair. Whether they've changed tires, hard to say. We don't get that information so directly. And it's not as concise as no. With ACC, 30 seconds. With ACC, the fact you've got refueling and tire change at the same time makes it a bit easy to say. But when they're done separately, as they are here in LMU, makes it a bit quite difficult to tell. But as we could jump to, Johnny Ashley behind Ben Brown, already up to that sort of key 4th place, you could say, to try and help their championship aids. Not that it would be doing much with James Cuddy still out in the lead. 8 seconds in front of Trink de Tass now. But into second chicane with some hypercars coming up to lap them as well, and also then lapping the BMW of, I believe that is, should see, Dean Smith, I think that is indeed making things a little bit more difficult as they now make their way to Mulsanne. Johnny in the slipstream isn't going to be close enough for a move here, but certainly setting up the move on the Aston Martin. We're over an hour into the race now, with just 25 minutes remaining, longer than what we've seen all season so far. This is sort of, you could say, a little bit of an unknown for the drivers.
It is, and we see a massive slide from Juniachi there as they come onto the back kind of straight, if you like, trying to catch up to Ben Brown, trying to get the power done as soon as they can, really, obviously, and maximise that. But sometimes you can do that a little bit too early as the Porsche comes alongside to lap them almost beyond track limits, really. And some of those curbs are a bit raised as well, so you don't want to hit them in the wrong way, really. But Johnny actually keeping it mostly tidy. And as you say, with this being the longest race so far, maybe there's a couple of knowns in terms of tyre wear and definitely fatigue, I think, in the drivers, as we see the Aston Martin go a bit deep into Indianapolis just ahead, and letting Johnny Ashley close up, I think, a little bit more. And maybe just this pressure is getting to Ben Brown a bit, with Johnny Ashley, that Mustang, completely filling his mirrors. Just, you know, at every corner you want to nail your brake, but you want to nail your exit, and with the car behind you so close, it can be easy to be put off.
Yeah, but Ben Brown been having a good second half of the season, it must be said. It's currently sitting 4th in the championship standings. We'd actually be looking to get in front of Trinket de Tas as things are currently. That's without factoring the drop around those, so it may or may not be true. As we also have Paulo Grady still up behind Tom Watson, one of them kicking up a bit of the gravel coming out of Mulsanne corner. But yeah, Ben Brown has been having a good second half of the season. 2 podiums in the last 2 races. Helped a little bit with incidents and issues for other drivers, but you can't say that this time. Ben Brown qualified P3 and has been P3 on pace this race so far. But John Ashley, per qualifying, you could say, for the championship leader coming into this round is, yeah, certainly getting back on form, and is trying to, if they can't round out this season with the championship, they'd at least like to round it out with a final podium, and it would be their 5th podium of the season.
Yeah, certainly. Ben, as you say, you know, a bit more of an experienced driver as well. Tom Watson here, trying to keep ahead of the McLaren behind. Yeah, Paul O'Grady, sure he's quick with his tyres, but well, we presume he's changed his tyres. Sure he's quicker, but struggling to find somewhere to get past, really, but at least he's keeping it on the circuit, keeping it clean, nice and tidy, and I'm sure having a great time. We've seen a lot of Paul O'Grady, actually. I'm thinking back throughout the series. I'm thinking of, you know, we've had races where we've just had packs and packs of GT3 cars just endlessly battling. So it's certainly been a good season for Paul. There's also another yellow flag, I believe, for Elvin Blomqvist, whose woes just don't end. It never rains, but it pours, eh? Struggling there, recovering onto the circuit again here. Very unfortunate.
Really frustrated at this point with the first mistake and just lost focus. I mean, when you're driving frustrated, it's just so much easier to make another mistake and just have your bad race spiral even worse. And we can see for Toy, they're catching up now with that latest mistake. And for Toy, did make that mistake themselves not too long ago. They'd already be in front of Blomqvist. But yeah, coming into this round leading the championship and potentially not even scoring a point is going to be very disappointing for the Ferrari driver. But there's still a chance, still something to fight for here. They won't be finishing any higher up than P9, but is already nearly 3 minutes behind Andy Hearn, so very unlikely they'll get P9 either. Looks like P10 will be their best chance, or the best result possible for them, not unless another hypercar makes a similar mistake to what Elvin Blomqvist made. But with the gaps as they are, there's sort of no drivers under pressure. Everyone has the gap, has the breathing room to just settle down, run a comfortable pace for them. So we might not see mistakes. So it looks like Paul O'Grady might finally have the move done on Tom Watson.
Indeed, I was just going to say as well, of the there's a lot of drivers with invalid laps last lap, it seems, but of the drivers who do have a valid lap, all 6 of them, Stevie Bain has the quickest lap, so there's your soundbite, Stevie. But yeah, Tom Watson, unfortunately falling back behind Paul O'Grady. We didn't see it happen, and I don't have a replay mark as we can't go back, unfortunately, but Paul O'Grady now on his way to catch up to Tim Bob. 24 minutes to go, 6.5 seconds is the gap. It'd be an interesting one. Certainly, once he's past Tim Bob, there's a big enough gap where I think that might be it, unless, as you say, some drivers have an issue, which isn't uncommon, as James Cowley himself comes into problems. Let's have a quick replay.
And he's lost the rear wing. This could be a pivotal moment in the GT3 Championship. We've had Elvin Blomqvist from the Championship lead crash out in the hypercars, and now James Cowley has a car go off into the gravel in front of them, comes back on it, and trying to avoid all he knows, James Cowley loses the rear end and spins into the wall themselves. That could give the championship back to Johnny Ashley.
Ooh,
and there's that's connection.
And we've seen a few of those this season. Some weird ones, but yeah, Mustang looking weird without a wing. Sorry.
That was Johnny Ashley just passing James Cowley as he came into the pit lane. Johnny Ashley is going to be absolutely elated at the moment, and if Johnny Ashley is still in voice, I'd like to be cheeky and drag him down to get a live reaction from him. But if he's still in VC at the end of the race, I'd love to hear his reaction and his thoughts on maybe taking the championship here, as obviously that also elevates him onto the podium without having to pass Ben Brown. And I think maybe now taking it a little bit cautiously, he's jumped back from Ben Brown by a couple second gap opening up there. But yeah, disaster. Yeah. Absolute disaster for James Cowley.
Yeah, and there's nothing at this point I think James Cowley can do unless Johnny Ashley has a moment, bins it, which so many others do as well at a crucial point. I just checked, I do have the powers to drag Johnny to the comms booth should it come to that. But yeah, certainly Johnny will be, as you say, elated, and at this point probably decide to lift the coast and just go to the end. You know, he's got P3, and that was P3 with Cowley in the lead as well. Would have been enough, you know, to get himself in the overall standings. And with Cowley out of that position, Johnny could finish wherever he likes, I think. Pretty much, anyway.
Johnny has a 20-point lead coming into this round, so as long as he finishes in front of Cowley, he's got it. With Cowley unlikely to finish on the podium, Johnny could finish 1-2 places behind Cowley, making a mistake of his own, and he would still take the championship. But yeah, that is so unfortunate. 2 drivers. I mean, Elvin Blomqvist, you could say, had the excuse of he wasn't going to win the championship in second behind Bevan. He had to push to try and get in front to overcome what was like a 7 or 8 second gap when he made the mistake. So James Cowley just pushing a little bit too Blomqvist just pushing a little bit too hard. For James Cowley, it was just unfortunate, the Porsche making a mistake in front of them. The Porsche curves is the last place you want to have to alter and deviate your race from the racing line, because you're already on the limit to have the car fully loaded up. James Cowley tried to come off the throttle, get on the brakes, shifted the weight balance forward, leaving the rear end light. It started to snap round, and as we've seen a couple of times already, trying to correct that slide, overcorrected and spinning into the wall. Very, very unfortunate for them. But yeah, while Cowley will be very displeased with what's happened, I imagine Johnny Ashley will be very pleased, will be a very happy man, and yeah, I really do hope we can get a word with him before the end of the stream, see how he's feeling, because I know he's, from being in VC with him, he's been very pumped about this championship, and had an instant with, I believe it was Dean Smith last week at Spa, that dropped him down the order and hurt his championship lead I had coming into this round, and he was very, very annoyed about it. So yeah, I suppose you could maybe say you know, what's the term? The gods have giveth to Kylie, but they have now taketh away as well. Things have balanced out with misfortune between our two GT3 championship contenders.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, but James Catley's been so consistent, you know, throughout the season. It's not a driver I'd imagine to drop it. But as you say, lapping traffic, you're offline, and Porsche curves as well. It's unfortunate, really. But yeah, that's diffused that battle for now. Unless Johnny wins it, he's currently in the pits. He's just entered the pits, has Johnny. So who knows? Maybe there's some strategy involved. Maybe he gets stuck in there. We don't know. There's 19 minutes to go. We'll have to wait and see. We'll definitely keep an eye on that because it's going to be so interesting. Dan Thompson here, who's just caught up over a second to Charlie Morgan, by the way, now within a second to Charlie Morgan. That's a personal best in Sector 1 and only 5/10 off of the best Sector 1. And within the slipstream now, Charlie Morgan, that big wide BMW, getting closer and closer still. Let me put the gap on the screen so we can all see as well. Onto the braking zone, actually, Charlie almost leaving the door open there, thinking, almost Charlie letting Dan through if he decided to on the brakes, I think, there. But remains in that order for now as they head up towards the second chicane, hairpin, one of the two. But closing up to Charlie is Dan now alongside and through to the braking zone of the hairpin. Oh,
Yeah,
actually locking the rear.
Yeah, locks the rears, gets the sideways, but gets the car back under control. However, the BMW closing in that rear green will pull to the inside, but the momentum immediately stalls for the BMW. I'll look to our top speed figures between these two, and it does indeed favour Dan Tomlinson by nearly 4 kilometers an hour. So that Cadillac having a bit more straight line speed, and it's for saving Dan Tomlinson this time towards Indianapolis, and Dan will be trying to use their pace. Was half second quicker last lap than Charlie Morgan. Will be trying to use that pace to pull a bit of a gap in the remaining 17 minutes.
Indeed, and 17 minutes to go. Let's have a quick peek at the energy remaining, because there's so many races, you know, we get to the end and someone has got a penalty. Let's have a look as we see Dan just slide through that corner there briefly. 90% for Alfie Bevan. You're usually a lot better at this than I am, figuring out, you know, they're halfway through the race and we've got 50%, that's enough. We've got 16 and a bit minutes to go. Is 19% enough? No. Okay.
No. I mean, break it down like this. 90-minute race, you break into 2 halves, that's 45 minutes per stint. If you were to do 1 pit stop, that means, you know, we're coming up to 15 minutes remaining, which would be a third of a 45-minute stint. So you'd be looking at wanting about 33%.
Okay.
Bevan has half of that, so yeah, Bevan maybe has a lap or 2 more. Angel has 20, that jumped from 30 to 27%. That was a bit of a jump. But it's very tight on making it. I think Angel might just fall 1 lap too short here. But yeah, they've a couple more laps than Bevan. But if Angel could get to the end of this race without making another pit stop, they would. They could actually win this race, but that is a big. Well, actually, there's 35 seconds between them, so it'll be close. But Angel would have to do a lot of energy saving, as we see. Ollie Knowles. They didn't like their new rear wing, so they've decided to get rid of it again and ditch it at the Porsche curves.
Indeed, let's have a look how that happens. The right hand, the rear already looks a bit loose, to be honest. Keeps it tight. The rear just stepping out, a little bit of tyre smoke, just trying to keep it in. Massive amount of speed into the wall there, and yeah, there goes the wing, unfortunately. Very unfortunate, but at least again, it's nearer the pit lane than somewhere else in the circuit.
Yeah, Ollie Knowles, you mentioned, already said they were struggling with the balance before this race, and already put quite a few clicks of rear wing into the car. to try and balance it. Lost them a lost straight line speed, and they've been struggling with it because of that. But it hasn't been enough. Really, they're still really struggling, unfortunately for them, and it seems that they have now retired from the race, and they will be our 4th retirement after Nick Manders. Of course, we've seen that incident from them not towards the start of the race on lap 2. That was a little moment there for Ryan Davies as they're catching up to Johnny Ashley.
Indeed, and also elect to pit does Ryan Davies actually. So I think that was actually the closest gap we had on the timing screen. I think Scotty's.
Sorry, just got interrupted a little bit. Well, no worry about that. Yes, closest gap, of course, that is from Johnny Ashley, as mentioned earlier, making a 2nd pit stop. We're just going through the DNFs before I got interrupted. Nick Manders, Max Farrell also retired. Jack Page had to retire because they came into the pits. We said they got a penalty. They served the penalty, and then they didn't have enough fuel to make it around for another lap, unfortunately. So they were meant to come in, fill up with fuel, but instead accidentally took that penalty stop. And yeah, they've meant that they were unable to continue. So those are our 4 unfortunate retirements in this race so far. Hopefully we'll not have any more in the 13 minutes that remain in this race. But yeah, it's all about strategy. Can you make it to the end of the race without pitting again? It's not looking possible for quite a few of our drivers, so where they'll end up, that is the question.
And it's a big question. I think at this point it's kind of a limbo space for a lot of these drivers, that lifting just enough, but also not knowing. I say not knowing, actually. I think the game has been up to so you can see the vertical energy of the other drivers around you. So just lifting and kind of is it a game of chicken actually? You know, trying to lift just enough, but maybe the drivers are going to pit anyway, so it's okay to pit, that kind of thing. But we will have to wait and see. All season, I think we've been wrong about strategy. I mean, you've definitely been closer than I have, to be honest, but we've definitely been surprised. But Zach Silver here, 5 seconds off Dan Lindblom, leaving it really late, and using a lot of the slipstream there to pass the McLaren in that GT3 field. I have to say as well, we've had a lot of interesting passes when the hypercars have been lapping the GT3 fields. You know, a bit of interesting behaviour from both sides. But I think this has been one of the better races. I mean, there's lots of room, obviously, so there's really no excuse, as there's never any excuse, really, but certainly here tonight. But certainly looks better than what we've seen all season.
I think the field's being a little bit more spread out this race than what we've seen for most of the season. I think to Fuji, where we had, 7 GT3s, each one within a second of the one in front, you know, that just made it so difficult. A track that is already really difficult, you know, just even past 1 or 2 GT3s for a hypercar. Here, a little bit more spread out, and you've got the long straights that, you know, you catch a GT3. Oh yeah, you know, simple, it doesn't really matter. The Porsche curves is certainly a little bit more interesting. We have seen a couple of dodgy moments through there. It's really a place that can make a big difference. If you've got experience, then you can find yourself getting in front. As I'm looking with yellow flag, it's Elvin Blomqvist once again into the gravel, coming out of the Porsche curves, and that car's twitching around again. It is going to be a 3rd trip to the pits for Blomqvist, and we'll get a replay of coming into this round, our championship leaders' mistake. They might not be finishing this race as they've spun round into the wall there in the replay on the Porsche curves. And as we're looking at this replay, they've spun round trying to get back into the pits, and this time they've lost their rear right tyre. You can see the tyre just sitting there at the front of the car, and the front left tyre lifted up because of that missing tyre. Whether they'll try and get back to the pits here, they'll need to wait for a moment of clear traffic to cross the track. But yeah, it's very much a day to forget for Blomqvist.
Indeed, it's very unfortunate. But yeah, great season nevertheless. And actually has decided to retire. Actually, we can see they'll pop it up on the screen, unfortunately. There's a bit of a moment there, a little twitch there from Alfie Bevan. Alfie Bevan, another driver, as I've just noticed, Sunny just taken the lead. Son pitted? Alfie pitted?
Yeah, Alfie has pitted. 14-second stop to Splash and Dash and Virtual Energy. Let's have a look at those energy numbers. What do we think? Can Angel make it to the end? 17%. Now, I'm trying to remember what the energy usage is per lap around here. That's something we're not information we're given. We kind of have to work it out ourselves. So I'm trying to remember back, but I want to say it's like 8%. I think Angel has like 2 more laps if they lift and coast. But with 9 minutes remaining in the race, we're going to have 3 more laps. Are we going to have 3 more laps? I think we're going to have 3 more laps. Trying to do math on the fly isn't very easy. I think this is just going to be a little too tight for Angel. I think they're going to have to come into pits. They'll still secure P2. They are nearly 2 minutes ahead of Zach Silver, so guaranteed to come out in front of Zach Silver. Zach Silver will likely get to the end. Stevie has already made a second pit stop and is actually right on the back of Zach Silver, and will be trying to make that overtake very soon. And they're just coming into the first chicane. The track getting a little bit darker once more. We haven't got quite to full darkness, but the sun is certainly getting ever closer to setting as we ride on board with Sun Angel coming up to the Porsche curves. 313 kilometers an hour, entering by 210 kilometers an hour minimum speed through the first apex. Not quite flat out through these left-handers, braking a little bit, quite a bit, then a bit more braking. Still running 5th gear gain minimum up by 210 through long right-hander, swing it into left-hander wide of the apex slow and to scrub off a bit more momentum, and we'll go for 1 more lap here. Moved towards the pit entry, but was just using it to open up the entry for this chicane. You can see through the chicane down to 90 kilometers an hour, and then accelerating out over the line to start what will be 3 laps remaining just about.
Indeed, and we see here Stevie Bain also trying to get past Zach Silver. Obviously, if Sun Angel was trying to go to the end, the earlier you start to decide to field save, the easier it becomes. And as the laps are so long, if you misjudge it and you go past the pit entry and you realise it's too late, it's going to be a heavy lap of field saving, to be honest. Yeah, Zach Silver still defending P3 away from Stevie Bain. Stevie's actually had a good race, and I sound surprised, honestly. That's because throughout the season he's tended to come into a bit of trouble, unfortunately, despite again showing flashes of brilliance across the race. Unfortunately, he just gets caught up as there is a Mustang GT3. He is now lapping, trying to get back onto the back of Zach Silver there, but the gap's grown a fair bit, to be fair. But this is really our closest battle on the track as it stands. Ryan Davis isn't too far away from James Cowley either, who's obviously recovering from the incident we saw earlier, and similarly Alvin Blomqvist themselves, who I think are out the pits now as well, trying to get past and back into the fray, really.
Yeah, big question I have here is, has Zach enough energy to go flat out to the end? Oh, Stevie Bates made a mistake, spinning off at the exact place that Blomqvist did for their last mistake that put them out of the race. Let's get a replay of this one as it loads through the Porsche curves here. Maybe we can ride on board with Stevie to get an idea of how that happened. Closing up to Zach Silver, a lot more confident through these corners. Now through the long right-hander again, just closing up, gets onto the grass, trying to open up the final left-hander, and that will spin them into the wall. And that could give Zach secure 3rd place for Zach Silver if they don't need to pit. Hopefully Stevie hasn't got too much damage from that. We see them through the chicane. The car sliding a little bit. It seems to be fairly straight. I don't think it's perfectly straight, but if it isn't, it's only out by like 1 or 2 degrees on the steering wheel, so it won't be too bad for Stevie Bain. Still in P4, 5.5 seconds back to Dave Spiller. So that should hopefully be enough of a gap for Stevie Bain to hold in P4. But yeah, unfortunate mistake there as they were trying to get past Zach Silver.
I was trying to discern if that was damaged on the right side or if it was the livery. I think it's damaged on the bodywork But yeah, Stevie, in his comfort zone, really, let's be honest, sliding and drifting around these corners, as he so often is. Might give it a hold on to fourth here, as you're saying as well. Deciding not to, well, if you don't know, deciding not to repair the damage. Doesn't look too bad. He got going fairly quickly after that incident, and he's still got a wing attached. So doing better than some, but certainly out of the question unless there's an error. It is P3 for Stevie, unfortunately. As we near 4 minutes remaining somehow of this race. Ben Brown here on the back of Johnny Ashley, which somehow these guys have inverted themselves. But Ben Brown within 3/10 of Johnny Ashley, maybe readying for a counterattack in that slipstream. The gap is coming down slowly there down the Mulsanne Straight. Let's see if this...
Ben Brown had a drive-through penalty. Their last pit stop is showing up with 0 seconds in the pit box. So maybe a drive-through penalty there where Ben Brown has brought Johnny Ashley sort of back into this fight as obviously unfortunately we don't have the virtual energy numbers for the GT3, so we don't know if they've been fuel saving a bit or if they've been pushing flat out. Of course, they're also trying to calculate how many laps will they do in this race, which depends on when the leader crosses the line, how many times the leader laps them, which is very tricky to try and line up all those variables. But either way, John Ashley is in front of Ben Brown, but Ben Brown isn't letting the Mustang, our provisional champion at the moment, it should be said, get away from him as they fight for the final 2 places on the podium, with Drink the Task 37 seconds up the road in the lead of this GT3. So obviously taking it after James Cowley had that sort of interaction with the wall coming up on Ollie Knowles, who had their own mistake. Yeah, is also has lots to worry about the hypercar traffic. Cadillac coming up behind them. You can see the rear view mirror.
Sorry, I just saw something out the background. It's 2.5 minutes to go. I mean, you have to wonder as well. Sure, maybe Ben Brown's got the pace at this point in the game, maybe. But does he want to sacrifice his position to try and get a move done on Johnny Ashley in front? It's risky to do unless he gets a nice run down the Mulsanne Straight. We see Johnny Ashley slightly sliding, understeering through the Porsche curves as the car tends to do naturally. And we see Ben Brown closing up so much more with all the extra grip he seems to have through this section. Maybe looking after his tyres a bit more. Maybe he's got a bit more fuel as well saved up, just being a bit more tidier through that complex as well. Cutting the corners nicely, shortening the track as they approach the final couple of corners here onto the brakes at last. They've got a hypercar on the inside as well. Ben Brown, I think, distracted by that almost, having to cut the corner really to avoid any kind of incident.
Yeah, the Porsche maybe trying to have a go at the Cadillac, but those two are on different laps. I believe that's Andy Hearn and Dan Tomlinson there. Obviously, Andy Hearn involved in the incident at the start of the race with Nick Manders and Max Farrell. So dropped back from having to repair damage from that. And Dan Tomlinson currently running in P7. But yeah, winding down into the final minutes, into the final laps of our first season on LMU. And we still have a brilliant battle here on the podium of GT3, coming through Tetra Rouge onto the Mulsanne Straight. And trying to work out if this will be the last lap for these two drivers or if they will have one more. Alfie Bevan is, by the way, coming into the final chicane, will start a final lap. It's whether or not he will catch and pass these GT3s to put them on to their final lap, or if they'll have to go for one more. That could be a crucial thing when it comes to strategy too, depending how much energy these drivers have. As I've said, unfortunately we don't have those numbers to figure it out. But Ben Brown, who only didn't stop in their pit box in their last pit stop, they might be really hoping that Alfie Bevan catches up and laps these two. But Johnny Ashley, I imagine, having made that pit stop, is maybe seeing Ben Brown's number. Of course, the drivers are shown what each other have for virtual energy, and maybe sees Ben Brown is a little short, and hoping that I hope it goes for one more lap. So it, Ben Brown is definitely not able to finish in front. We see the energy numbers there. Angel did have to come in for a quick pit stop, 8 seconds in the pit box, and now resides in second place. But yeah, can Ben Brown get the move done? Is closing in with the slipstream here. Pulls out to the inside towards Mulsanne corner, and it's side by side. Johnny Ashley cuts across the nose of Ben Brown and is taking himself out of the potential championship winning position. Luckily, it looks like Johnny Ashley still has his rear wing. Let's get a replay of that. Maybe we can get on board with Ben Brown to try and see how alongside he was on the Mustang. But closing up in the slipstream, we see it closing. There's the first braking boards, gets to the inside and just tags the back of Johnny Ashley's Mustang, spins him into the wall. Was Johnny far enough alongside? It's hard to say from that angle, but I gotta say, what feels like very risky. Way too risky for Johnny Ashley to just try and close the door. Johnny Ashley has returned to the pits. That gives the championship back to James Kiley, who resides 4th within the class.
Indeed. It's tricky, Ben Brown being there on the inside, there's not really much more room on the inside. I think just a misjudgment on both. We see a missing tyre there from Johnny. Unfortunately, that's the reason why he had to retire. Otherwise, what he had to do was limp to the end and stay ahead of James Cowley, but unfortunately he hasn't been able to do that. Oh, it's so unfortunate on the last, or almost the last lap as well. That's it's so unfortunate, and you hate to see it really. And again, there's no need for it. He's already won the championship. I'm almost speechless.
He just needed to bring the car home. You see Ben Brown, putting the nose up the inside, at least give him the room before the braking point. That right-hander, it's not ideal, but Johnny Ashley did not need to fight that, and maybe it's best we don't hear from Johnny Ashley after this race. But I'm not sure this championship is actually over, because we still have dropped rounds, and Johnny Ashley's current dropped result is a P7. So Johnny will drop this non-scoring round and pick up a P7. That could be just enough points on top of the 20-point gap he has to James Kiley to maybe hold on. It kind of depends. Does James Kiley finish 4th here, or will they get up to P3, round the outside of Matthias Fuskin into the braking zone of the Ford chicane, and will get themselves back onto the podium despite the mistake, and that will be the end of the race. James Kiley taking P3, the final podium place in the final corners of this race. That could have got them the championship. Alfie Bevan obviously has taken the win tonight, as we see what looks like, is this a 4-way fight? Yeah, it is a 3-way fight, sorry, for P3. Zach Silver trying to hold off 2 Porsches led by Dave Spiller here. Stevie Bain in the background has recovered after that mistake to the inside of Indianapolis and spinning into the wall again for Dave Spiller this time. Collects the tire barrier on the outside, and now promotes Stevie Bain up to P3, and Stevie now looking to the inside of our arches, got themselves alongside. More wheel-to-wheel contact between the two of them, but Stevie does get the move done this time. Zach Silver still running along. I think it's losing out because they're saving fuel, trying to look at last lap. Unfortunately, Zach Silver invalidated their last lap, so we can't see what the time is for them. But actually trying to come back here is on the outside of Stevie Bain, trying to send it the long way around, but cannot carry enough speed. So Angel has finished in P2, but finishing P3 will be taking it on the final lap after a mistake not too long ago in this battle for P3. They've caught up, they've got done. Don't get a drive-through penalty on the final lap for track limits, Stevie. That would be pretty on brand for Stevie, actually. But no penalty indicator has popped up, and Stevie is going to come through and take P3. Zach Silver will have to settle for P4, but Dave Spiller will fall to P5 after that attempt to the inside of Indianapolis. Sketchy corner to try and make an overtake. Did not pay off for Spiller in the end. And wow, we had quite a cat race throughout most of that race, must be said. Those final few laps really kicked off.
No, it really did. There was a moment of calmness, and suddenly there was, packs of cars together who decided to go racing, funny enough. Yeah, some great action. Unfortunately, Johnny Ashley, etc. But we took the whole race, so things can happen. And things needed to happen in terms of drivers making mistakes and things like that for other drivers to gain positions. As we see a couple of other hypercars there finish, crumb across the line at last and end the first season of LMU at oNiD as well. I mean, what a great season. I know the race isn't entirely over, but I mean, it's been a great watch, to be honest.
It has been. There's been some fantastic battles throughout the season across both classes, and it has come to a spectacular end in both classes once again. Wow, it has been a season for sure, and yeah, I mean the ending to this race, I feel like sums this season up pretty well. Maybe a little bit tame compared to the rest of the season, but still a great race. Championships being decided on the final laps. The stakes from a championship contenders shows just how difficult this game is. But yeah, what a season it has been.
Certainly. Let's have a quick peek at the... Oops, that was the wrong button, sorry. And I've broken it. I was going to say, let's look at the end results. Give me a second to get them on the screen. Sorry, go on.
We'll get there with the end results in a moment, because yeah, we will need to run through them to recap that race. Alfie Bevan takes the final victory here at Le Mans by a commanding 34 seconds, and that will also give them the championship in the end. Their 4th win of the season, 5th podium. What a brilliant season from Alfie Bevan. Yeah, their lowest finish was a P6. They missed 2 rounds of the season as well, so they weren't actually able to rely on any drop rounds if they made a mistake and weren't able to finish one of the races. So yeah, brilliant job from Alfie Bevan to take the championship. Stone Angel will take a P2 final podium place, their 3rd podium of the season, finishing 34 seconds off pace. And Stevie Bain taking a podium as well in the final round. That is their only podium of the season. So great way for Stevie to end this season off. Zach Silver finished 4th with that fuel save strategy, just missing out on their first podium. And Dave Spiller could have had a podium if it wasn't for that maybe a final lap incident trying to get past Zach Silver. Very unfortunate there, but yeah, it is unfortunately the way things went. Dan Tomlinson would take P6 ahead of Charlie Morgan in the Zone BMW and Daniel Lindblom in P8. Andy Hearn carried on after that first lap instant to grab P9, and so did Vertoy to get P10, the final points paying positions, and the final finisher of our hypercar field, Alvin Blomqvist. It started with a mistake in the first braking zone of the race, giving up the lead to Alfie Bevan. Never recovered back into the lead, and eventually would make a key mistake. After that, they made further mistakes eventually. Didn't just take them out of the championship fight, but the race altogether. Very disappointing end for the driver who's won 3 races this season with 5 podiums in total. It's been a good season, but a very disappointing way to end it. Max Farrell will take P12, and Nick Manders 13th, not finishing after that lap 1 instant. Max Farrell locking the brakes and causing that lap 1 instant. The GT3 field, Trink de Tas would win our final race in the field, taking their first win of the season and their fourth podium to what is actually going to be a interesting result regarding the championship. They were only 42 points behind Johnny coming into this race, and we'll get on to Johnny in a moment. Ben Brown takes second place, another podium, 3 podiums to finish, round out the season for Ben Brown. Great second half of the season, and did so on pace this round, having qualified P3. So well done to Ben Brown. And James Cowley recovering up to P3, a move in the final corners of the race to take one final podium. But you gotta say, we'd be a bit disappointed to not win this race. Was commanding at the front, came across an Ollie Knowles having an incident and trying to avoid it, lost control of their own car, spinning into the wall, losing their rear wing, and what at the time thought was going to lose them the championship. Whether it has or not, we'll have to confirm very shortly. Matthias Fuskin would be the driver just to miss out on their what would have been back-to-back podiums for them at the end of the season, having taken second last time out. And so, unfortunately, they just missed out. With Rand Davies rounding off the top 5. Tim Bob would take P6, had Tom Watson in P7, Paul O'Grady at P8 with a long pit stop compromising them this race. Darren Wilkes would take P9 and showing up as P10, but as a DNF is Johnny Ashley. He will drop this result. Luckily for him, it might be enough to just let him hold on to the championship. The drop results, we'll have to check in a moment. Dean Smith and Frank Vevick would finish 2 laps down. That's how they're not in front of Johnny. Johnny was only 1 lap down, crashing out on the final lap there. And Ollie Knowles and Jarrett Page not finishing in the GT3 class.
Indeed, and that's a good point, by the way, with Johnny Ashley's DNF. We've seen the... I don't know how to put it into words, really. The results for DNFs aren't always DNFs as far as SimGrid and LMU are concerned, if you know what I mean. So it will be interesting to see how that is passed. I mean, as you say, we'll be put into the drop round anyway in P10. So, yeah, we'll have to wait till SimGrid updates because I can't do the maths either. I'm looking at the scoring online. I can't work it out. So we'll have to wait and see until it updates. It hasn't updated yet, unfortunately. But what we can look at in the meanwhile is the standings as they are before this race, just to give you an idea of how close it is as we wait for the results.
I will say Ben Brown and Johnny Ashley were in the general admin chat as the race was happening. They're not there anymore. Whether they've both gone off in a little bit of a huff or whether they've gone to manager chat to shout at each other, we don't know. But yeah, those very unfortunate incident between them two at the end. One I imagine will come up in the incident panel's view and may receive penalties. Of course, we still have stewarding, we still have post-race penalties potentially coming up after this race. Just because it's final round doesn't mean that they won't be applied. Unfortunately, we won't have a stream to confirm them. But there weren't many incidents in that race, so there shouldn't be many incidents. But yeah, that could be, well, I suppose, well, Ben Brown maybe getting a penalty could, I suppose, lose him the podium. Maybe. No, actually, Ben Brown second. He was a lap ahead. Third down in the GT3s, finished a lap down. So Ben Brown is secured in second place. So yeah, a penalty in any case from that incident won't make any difference to the championship as we wait for hopefully be soon an update from the from this race on the standings. But yeah, as Ben says in the chat, he's going to be a tense evening in the admin chat. Will be indeed. And throughout the race, should also say thank you very much to ZK Sim Racing for subscribing for the 3rd month in a row. Your support of the channel is greatly appreciated and it's great to have you on board this year. Hopefully you and everyone else watching has enjoyed not just this race, but this entire season. Obviously our first season here on the Mon Ultimate, a game that I think I can speak for the majority, if not all the admins, have been very, very excited for this year. And yeah, what a way to get started before we head into season 3 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, certainly. And there'll be lots more LMU in season 3 as well. So lots more hypercars, LMP2, GT3, GTEs to come across the week as well. So not just on Mondays, but yeah, great season. Thank you for joining me, Scotty, as well. So yeah, that was...
It has been a pleasure, very entertaining to commentate on this first season of the Mon Ultimate, but I'm looking forward to racing next season, which, speaking of season 3, while we wait on the championship standings to update, how about we go through, as it was announced earlier today for everyone. Of course, those are regular racers or our Patreon supporters have had early access over the weekend. But for everyone, season 3 is out on SimGrid. You can sign up. Let me go through what we have for season 3. Let me get the post up to go through all of our weekly events coming up. Mondays, we are sticking with LMU, of course. We are going to be having a GT3 festival for season 3. Pure GT3 class, 65-minute races for next season, so a little bit longer, but sort of guaranteeing one stop, I should think. With those races, track variations and weather will be playing their part as well. So join us for a single class adventure on Le Mans Ultimate. Tuesdays, as ever, will be our the original Assetto Corsa, and we are having the JCW or John Cooper Works Mini World Tour. 3 15-minute races each evening, success ballast for the top 10 in the championship, and a reverse grid in the third race. Should make some fantastic racing with some fantastic front-wheel drive cars. That will be some great action. Then on Wednesdays, we have the return of the SimHound Academy, which is also making the jump to the Mon Ultimate. Its first season will have feature GT3 cars and LMP2 cars for rookie drivers to have a chance to learn LMU and become familiar with multi-class environment. There's a lot to learn with coaching on Tuesdays, I believe, for that championship. If you are a rookie or seasoned rookie on SimGrid, sign up for that, and hopefully you can improve your skills. Also on Wednesday, we have our console side on ACC. The GT World Challenge should be a fun GT3 series for those on Xbox and PlayStation. Thursday is continuation of our iRacing series. We have a British Formula 4 Championship coming up around some great British circuits, and then ending off with a little international round at Spa. So yeah, should be great to see some of the lower tier single-seaters racing. Then on Friday, we will have another console championship on ACC, or a one-night championship series is coming up. Different cars weekly with races fortnightly. Should be a cool format. A little bit of experimentation, something a little bit more unique for the console lot on Friday. And then Sunday, our big series. That is, once again, as going to be switching to the Mon Ultimate, and is going to be the LMU 100 series for 100-minute races. The typical hypercars and GT3 cars will be very interesting coming with the strategy, as if you've noticed this season, and on all the typical tracks, pit stops have come sort of 45 minutes into the race. If you want to do a one-stop in a 100-minute race, you need to go 15 minutes. Bit of fuel saving, and then do you change tires or not? It'll be a very interesting question. So join us on Sundays for, I would say, some of the most interesting races when it comes to strategy around. It will be a fantastic season, and that there is a little bit more, but make sure to join our Discord, read the announcements to get the links to sign up, or find them on SimGrid themselves. Season 3, it's going to be a fantastic season, and I can't wait to commentate on some more of it, but also race in some of the great series as well.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for running through that. Lots on offer. So, as Scotty was saying, do join the Discord and get involved if you aren't already. SimGrid doesn't look to have updated, Scotty, so I think we'll leave it for now, unfortunately. But yeah, just again, what a great season. Obviously, we had Le Mans there at the end there. We had to have Le Mans really at the end there. What a great track and what a great opening season, or opening series, I should say, to LMU. And yeah, I'm looking forward to all the new racing that's yet to come. But yeah, anything else?
No, it's very unfortunate we can't get the championship sense. It's usually updated by now, but the one time we really,
Yeah.
really want it, SimGrid is denying us, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's been a fantastic season. What a way to kick off the Mon Ultimate on in oNiD. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to three quite different series coming up for the Mon Ultimate. They'll all be great fun, and some of the other series will be great fun as well. Yeah, really looking forward to what's coming up. Of course, we also have some socials next week that won't be on stream, but if you want to join them before season 3, make sure you get signed up, because spaces, like she mentioned, signups have been filling our The Mon Ultimate races quite a bit. So, if you are interested, make sure you do get signed up sooner rather than later to secure your spot. Because yeah, it has been fantastic, and I'm running out of words to say about it. It's just been great.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think we'll sign off. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us in chat. Thank you for watching. Thank you for racing with us. Join the Discord yet again if you haven't already. Some lots of stuff on there. But for now, yeah, good night, and join us throughout the rest of the week if you'd like. There's some great racing.
Till next time, bye bye.